So I would welcome everybody a good evening. This is our second workshop in line with the International Day of Yoga celebrations. My name is Diego Baldi. I'm from Inner Wellness Studio. And these workshop series are presented in association with the Sivananda World Peace Foundation and Iseva, an NPO dedicated to bringing yoga to a more inclusive and diverse light in South Africa. So I'm very happy to be sharing this second workshop, and we're going to be discussing the very dynamic and evolving history of yoga, looking at the different branches that make up this holistic tree, we could say branches of yoga. And we're going to also explore the different styles of Hatha yoga. Ending the conversation, we're going to give practical ways to embody and bring yogic philosophy into our everyday. So I'm very excited to introduce us to our presenters for the evening. I would welcome the Inner Wellness Teachers family, and everybody will introduce themselves and just share about their yoga practice. So I would welcome Audrey.
Thank you, Diego. Thank you for having me this evening. My name is Audrey Subramani, and I have been doing yoga for the last 3 to 4 years. I'm a fairly new student, and I've just completed my teacher training with Inner Wellness last year. I joined the teacher training program because I would like to make yoga more inclusive for everyone, and most importantly, I would like to make yoga more accessible. People often shy away from the practice, saying that they don't have a flexible body or that they aren't able to attend classes, but it's more about having an open heart and a flexible mind. I'm really looking forward to our discussion tonight. Thank you, Diego.
Thank you so much, Audrey. And I would introduce us to Ramashna. So thank you, Ramashna. Welcome.
I'd like to say welcome to everybody. My name is Ramashna Naidu, and I'm a yoga instructor, and I did my teacher training course with Inner Wellness and Diego. And I'm also very new to the teaching side of yoga. I have been a practitioner of Bhakti yoga for many years. And I like the way yoga facilitates my practice in Bhakti yoga. And I believe there's something in yoga for everybody, no matter where you come from. And I'm very happy that you all have joined in today to listen into our discussions, and maybe all grow and learn more. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Rami. And next I'll introduce Nontlantla. Thank you. I would just take a moment just to welcome Nontlantla. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Diego. My name is Nontlantla Dimba, and I graduated with Inner Wellness Studio in 2019. Currently, well, my purpose for having joined Inner Wellness Studio was for my own home-based practice. And currently, I'm just offering my teacher services to one of the NPOs here in Durban that is assisting people with their disability. So it's more of a physio center. So at the moment, then that is where I'm offering my services. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Nontlantla. So I would also next hand over to Ja Kolani Radebe. So welcome.
I give thanks again for this opportunity. My name is Kolani Radebe. My background with yoga started from PNP from 2007 or 2008. born in 1997 or 1998. It's where I started to practice there with a community teacher called Spanish. I also graduated last year with inner wellness, where I've graduated with Vinyasa Hatha Yoga alignment certificate, did my 200 hours with joy, with inner wellness. My scope of teaching and practice, it's more on a community-based. I try for inclusiveness in yoga. There's this NPO, Iseva, of which myself, Diego, and other few teachers have started. Its aims and highest intention is to make yoga accessible for all. It's an inclusiveness in yoga. Big thanks for being a part of this workshop. Enjoy your yoga, International Yoga Day. Yes.
Thank you. Thanks, Polani. So good. I would introduce myself. I'm Diego Baldi. I'm the founder of Inner Wellness Studio, and we're a yoga studio over the last 10 years that's really been working on presenting a holistic and a therapeutic approach to yoga. And we've also recently developed the MPO Iseva with the intention to really open the scope of yoga teachings. So I'm happy to be with us this evening. And the first part of our discussion, we're going to discuss the different branches of yoga. And it's really beautiful that we are multifaceted beings. And yoga can meet us to take care of our physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual wellness. And I will invite Ramashna to share about the different branches of yoga. Thank you. So thank you to
Thank you,
Ramashna.
Diego. So I'd like to speak about a few branches that, well, one of which is very dear to me, and that is, as I mentioned before, Bhakti Yoga. So Bhakti Yoga is the practice of devotion, and in my practice, it's specifically devotion to the Supreme Being. Some of you would like to call him the divine, but yes, so in my practice, or in the practice of Bhakti, we try to connect everything in our lives to the divine. We try not to separate any of our activities and any of our goings on. So even if you have a job, you can do your job in the service of the divine, and in doing so, you're also serving, humanity at large. So there's also that aspect of compassion and just being off the bodily concept, so not identifying too much with the body, and that's where yoga and pranayama and hatha yoga is very beneficial, as we can disconnect from the body and focus on something that's more internal and the real you, basically. So that is Bhakti Yoga. And then, of course, we, as I mentioned, Hatha Yoga. So Hatha Yoga is the actual asanas, the practice of asanas. And it's very nice because even though you have all these different aspects of yoga, they're all intertwined and interconnected. And the word yoga in itself means to connect, to yoga. So all these different aspects of yoga and different styles of yoga are very integrated in some way or the other. So Hatha Yoga is the asanas, but in doing so, these physical postures, there's something that goes on within you, something deeper, whether it's something emotional, something mental, or something spiritual. It depends where you're at in your practice and where you are at in your life, that you can allow these asanas to give you that support and give you that benefit. So, for example, take myself, for example, and I have a very restless mind in general, and I get very easily bored and distracted, and I can't really stick with anything for too long. But since I've been practicing yoga, I've become very determined, for example. So, so that's Hatha Yoga, and then I'd like to move on to Jnana Yoga, which is knowledge-based. That is basically the philosophy behind yoga, and that's so vast and interesting. So yeah, I just want to touch on those three branches of yoga, if you will.
That's so lovely. Thank you. Thank you, Ramashna. And you started us on a very kind of heart-centered and a higher intention of yoga, this idea of bhakti and devotion. So I appreciate your input. And just to give us a definition, sometimes yoga is defined, and Ramashna was saying unity. So we can unite the body with the breath and mental awareness. This is one aspect of how we can unite. We can unite ourselves harmoniously with our communities and our environment. And that higher intention of yoga that Rami brought us to the heart is uniting our sense of ourself to the supreme infinite being. And that's a beautiful integration of union, connecting our spirit with the infinite. So lovely. And I also think we are multifaceted beings. So these different branches can help us physically. We saw Hatha Yoga helps to maintain the health and the harmony of the workings of the physical body, which is so closely connected to the mind that it's very hard to separate our emotional health and our mental health. So as we clear the body and purify the body through these Hatha Yoga or these body-based yoga practices, it actually serves to purify the nervous system. So the mind naturally becomes more free. And this opens us up into the aspects of the mental aspects of yoga. I will talk about Raja Yoga, which is a very beautiful concept, and Hatha Yoga, this physical preparation and integration of yoga in the body, is really a preparation for what is termed as Raja Yoga. And we all know Raja Yoga as a royal path. And this brings the body integrating with our mental aspects of concentration, meditation, and integration completely in the moment. So to add to Ramashna talking about Bhakti Yoga, the yoga of the heart, Hatha Yoga, the yoga to support the balance of the body and the nervous system, preparing the mind for Raja Yoga, this royal path. I'll also briefly mention Karma Yoga because it's also very close to our heart, and the intention of Iseva is selfless service. So the definition of karma is to serve others without the expectation of any rewards on a personal level. So it's going beyond ourselves to serve others. So I would invite Jai Polani, if you'd like to share a little bit on the topic of perhaps Karma Yoga or any of the other branches you might be inspired to share.
Thanks again for this opportunity. For me, I would say yoga is one, but through the limitation of our understanding is now on branches, and the ancient designers this way. Yoga is like a bread of which taste buds can give different meanings to it. It's not the same taste for every one of us. For me, I would first say yoga is one. It's hard to say it's diverse because I've been exposed to Bhakti yoga when I was at university as a student. I've attended lots of PYS program, and one of my students, yes, we used to go there. He was asking me, "Hey, where is yoga there?" Because we just sit down there and we sing, and after that we eat food. And then he was asking me, what is yoga about this? I said, hey, maybe in time to come we find the meaning on what's going on with Bhakti yoga. But even with Hatha yoga, it depends on how you see yoga. For me, I would say Hatha yoga is a foundation of yoga because with asana, once you mastered the asana, the poses, you have a choice to focus on your breathing. Once you focus on your breathing, this will prepare you on your concentration, from your concentration to meditation. So it's all integrated, and the beauty of it is most people, they relate most of the time with yoga, the physical aspects of it. And then after the physical aspects of it, yoga, same as the spiritualist, it's something that is personal. You choose that my intention is to focus on Hatha yoga due to my intention and the need and my needs. So for me, I appreciate all yoga as one. I don't see any division, because even with China yoga, when you say this yoga for knowledge, knowledge is the most important thing in yoga. Although students and other people cannot see the importance of information, the one that Yoko said will articulate Raja yoga still is a yoga good, yoga for kings or yoga for queens. They say he who mastered his mind is a king. So all these yoga, I would say, are relevant, and those who design it, the ancient, they design it for different audience in this time. They're all relevant because someone might not wanted to serve or to practice this kind of yoga, may find joy and comfort in this next kind of yoga. But yoga is one, and its intention is to unite us with ourselves and others through righteousness and love of one. Yes.
Thank you, Kolani, for sharing. And that's such a lovely coming together that we are multifaceted, and the ancient wisdom was based on a holistic framework, seeing the interconnectedness of everything. Our modern day time, unfortunately, is fortunately and unfortunately, specialization and reductionism. We've actually reduced the body and the mind into two separate fields of study. But actually, it's a beautiful time that we're seeing an integration, that the body, the mind, and the emotions are very intimately intertwined. And what Kolani was saying so beautifully is that we're all so uniquely individual that some people might be more physically inclined to develop and to find their fullness through yoga on a physical, primarily physical spectrum, where other people might have more of an emotional or an intellectual inclination. So it really allows yoga to meet us where we are. And on that note, if I can invite us to share what was the physical, the emotional, and the kind of mental benefits we've experienced from the yoga. So maybe I'd invite us to share. Nonhlanhla. Welcome.
Sorry, Diego, I couldn't hear you there for a moment, and thank you.
Welcome.
Sorry, I didn't get, thank you. Sorry, I couldn't hear you very well. If you can
No,
just
that's great.
repeat, please.
We were just chatting about the holistic benefits of yoga, how yoga can meet us physically, mentally, emotionally. Maybe you can share us how this holistic practice of yoga has benefited you physically, emotionally, and mentally. So give us your experience of the holistic benefits.
Oh, great. Thank you. Yes, for me, yoga is powerful in helping anyone of any background or ability to find their inner peace that we all crave. The reason I'm also bringing in person of anyone or background or ability, earlier I mentioned that I'm actually working with an NPO that is assisting people with their disabilities. It is the physio center, yet I've been able to weave yoga into that same space. And there's a lot of traction that is happening, and people are enjoying it. So at the end of the day, it's not only about being able to touch your toes, but I've been able to take it to the people that live with disabilities, and it's working fine. And for me personally, I think if I was not introduced to yoga, I don't know, maybe I would have ended up in some psychiatric hospital, but I find that it has made me stronger mentally, and it has also been able to keep me in great physique. So I'm really grateful. Thank you.
Thank you, Nonhlanhla. And
could you hear me well then?
Yeah, great. We can hear you quite comfortably, and all good. So thank you for sharing. I appreciate it. And it's really nice to see even if we are limited, Nonhlanhla was telling us her experience of working with physical disabilities, that if we are maybe limited in a physical sense, yoga can really support us in so many ways to be adaptable, that we can benefit even from the yogic postures, if there are limitations, but also the other aspects or branches of yoga help us to get kind of mental clarity. I think Nonhlanhla was also highlighting the kind of mental benefits of the yoga practice. And we will discuss towards the end of the conversation the relevance of this holistic practice in our modern day times. But we're going to take you back to the origins of yoga. And it's very hard in terms of the origin of yoga is said to be closely related to the origin of creation. So for most of the history of yoga, it was passed down through oral traditions. So traditional cultures and indigenous cultures throughout the world were very naturally in tune with their body, in tune with their breath, in tune with their senses and their natural environment. That yoga was almost more of a natural way of living in a more traditional setting. So you can see from pre-written history of yoga, there's a huge evolution and passing down of traditions orally. We see that in all traditions, and that's the same for yoga. We also see the first depictions of yogic practices in the time of the ancient Egypt civilization. So even the asana practices that we all are fond of in this modern contemporary time of yoga, which is really beautiful, seeing how yoga evolves as culture and time requires that support, yoga can adapt as a culture to the time. So it's really beautiful to see that even in the pyramids, there's pictures of Dhanurasana, the bow pose. When it came into the Sanskrit realm, the bow pose was called Dhanurasana. So you see this very clearly depicted. Also the full wheel pose, which we call Chakrasana. Meditative poses, seated postures. So definitely there's references to Hatha Yoga that comes from our ancient African spiritual traditions. There's also very much reference to Jnana Yoga in terms of philosophy, explaining the chakra system and the evolution of consciousness. So that alludes to spiritual practice being very much grounded right here in Africa. And it's really beautiful. We have to give a lot of homage and a lot of respect to the development of yoga through the Vedic period. So I'll actually take this time to introduce Ramlutchman to give us a nice overview, because it's really nice to know how the yoga has developed over time from the beginning, where we will refer to the Vedic period, and where we see there's a lot of evidence in terms of texts, in terms of historical references. So I would, with lots of excitement, invite Ramlutchman just to share about the timeline and the development of yoga.
Thank you, Diego. So pre-Vedic period, or what we would call the pre-classical yoga era, there's very little that, or almost nothing that has been documented. So as Diego mentioned, it was an oral tradition. So, you know, it was said that people had exceptional memories and exceptional intelligence during that time, and therefore things didn't need to be documented on paper. So it's something that people imbibed. It was very natural. So there's not much that we know. We can't say exactly where it started, but we can say that yoga, or evidence of it, has been found in most ancient civilizations in some way or the other. And yoga is not owned by, you know, any tradition or any culture. It seems like it's something divine that has been granted to mankind as a form of taking care of one's body and mind and soul. And so that we can say about the pre-classical era. At some point, we have the Vedas, and this is related to the civilization in India, the Indus Valley civilization. And at this point, we see that's when yoga was documented, and we've got more evidence and something that's more tangible. And then, well, we're looking at the Rig Veda specifically, where the knowledge of yoga is documented, and of course the Bhagavad Gita. And this is, we're looking at a time frame of about 5,000 years ago. So the Bhagavad Gita as well is you know, a very important literature that we use in yoga. And thereafter, we are looking at the classical era of yoga, which is a time of Patanjali and the Patanjali's Yoga Sutras. So it's Yoga Sutras are a series of verses. They say it's about 196 verses, basically giving more information about yoga. So Patanjali is regarded as the father of yoga because of this specific reason, the documentation and making yoga more systematic. And this, so we call this a classical era, and we looking at about probably 2,000 years ago, 2,300 years ago about. It's very hard to say exactly when. And then thereafter, we go into the post-classical yoga era, and the era that's most relevant to us, because yoga has become more accessible during the modern times. And of course, can benefit everyone anywhere in the world. So we can speak about Swami Vivekananda, who is from India and took the yoga philosophy to the United States. He gave a talk in Parliament and introduced the whole philosophy of yoga. And I'm sure it was quite interesting to the West to learn about this, this ancient practice that has probably got forgotten along the way. So thereafter, we have numerous exponents of yoga. We can speak of Paramahamsa Yogananda, who also went to the United States. We can speak about oh gosh, there's so many that took this philosophy to the United States, and it happened just at the right time, because that's when the counterculture was growing in the United States, and people were looking for an alternate lifestyle. They were trying to go against the mainstream. They wanted to be more free, and they really accepted this this philosophy, and I think it became more popularized in the USA, and because of that, it just spread worldwide and given us all this opportunity to reconnect with this ancient tradition that had gotten lost along the way. There was then Krishnamacharya, who is known as the father of modern day yoga, and he obviously made also yoga more accessible. One of his disciples was the first female yoga teacher. Indra Devi was actually from Russia, and she again took the practice and to the West, to specifically Hollywood, which obviously made it more popular and glamorous. And there, the other students of Krishnamacharya was a very important person, Iyengar, who also developed the alignment-based yoga, which for me is a wonderful practice, because I find that you can do yoga. I mean, yoga can literally be for anyone, just with a little bit of adjustments of the body and the limbs, and it becomes very inclusive for everybody. So he's brought about alignment-based yoga. He's brought about sequencing, very careful sequencing of yoga practice, making it more flowing and enjoyable. And he's also brought about the use of props. So something also that will help us make yoga more inclusive. So depends on, whatever issues you may have, you can use props to adjust and make yoga more inclusive. So there are, numerous other yoga teachers and gurus that we can mention, but those are just a few that we can say, we are here now in this present time, and can all enjoy yoga, can all benefit from yoga. And as a yoga teacher, I can now extend this to my students and to my communities, and help people, mind, body, and spirit. Thank you.
Thank you, Ramlutchman. That was really lovely. I really appreciated the little journey. It seems like you took us through time and space, and really showing us how yoga has developed. So thank you. That was really lovely, the little journey you shared with us. I'm going to hand over to Jai Polani, also with your specialty in history, and you can share with us a little bit about this topic of the timeline and the history of yoga.
Thanks again for this opportunity. With the timeline, Well, I would like to briefly focus on the pre-Vedic time. And you will find that even with academia now, they are more like, they are more of looking on the voice of the people who haven't a voice before. For example, I would say the timeline of yoga during the time of ancient, it was, you will find that there is some of the evidence, some is not have the evidence because of the limitation. Some it is oral, and with the orality of it, and some of the rites and the ritual of the yoga, you find that it's still linked with the indigenous populace, even though it's not categorized on the paradigm of yoga. But you find that like the indigenous populace, they always have a close connection to these rituals, this yoga do today, like meditation, physical postures, and other holistic integration of yoga. It's the matter of giving a more in-depth study to the field of pre-Vedic history. You know, my interest as well as a scholar, I wish to pursue more on the history, on the pre-Vedic, because you find that with the Africans, there is evidence. If you go to Mexican civilization, the ancient one, you will find this, right? So there is no relevance to where it originates and where it came from. The mindfulness of yoga is that what makes it relevant in this context and in this time. All the information from all these periods, all that was gathered is relevant today, no matter it's pre-Vedic or after Vedic, classic or modern. All the body of knowledge, all the shared knowledge that has been accumulated even from the time of pre-Vedic time, it still contributes and make what yoga it is today. The thing is, we need more investment on research and see what the ancient did in order to contribute to this. Origins are always, even myself, shy away on the origins of yoga, as to focus on the relevance of yoga today. It's a hope for everyone today. It's relevant despite its different origins. Thanks.
Thank you, Kulani. So yes, I would say thank you, and it's really nice to see the scope that everybody can actually practice, and also the thought that comes to mind that yoga is also alluding that the wisdom and the knowledge is not to look into the past or into the books, but all of this philosophy and knowledge is giving us a practice to look within and find the wisdom and find the our essence, our truth, which is very personal. So it's a very beautiful and personal practice. If there's anything else on the timeline, we'd use this opportunity. So feel free to mention if you'd like to share. Otherwise, we're going to go into a very practical way. How can yoga's philosophy become a part of our day-to-day? And that's really beautiful about yoga. It's a philosophy that is embodied. It's a practical philosophy. So I would ask the teachers to share what are the key philosophical or yogic concepts, and how can all of us at home bring these philosophies into our practice of life. So I would invite Ramlutchman to share key concepts and how we can integrate in practice.
So I think the best way for me to approach this would be to speak about my own practice. As you know, yoga is something very personal, and that's the only way I can really see it right now in regarding the question. So it's definitely about again bringing us back to that fundamental, meaning of yoga, which is to connect. So I feel by practicing yoga and quietening the mind, I'm more easily able to connect not only with myself, within myself, and connect to the divine, but also more importantly in our present day lives, to connect to one another. We have become such intolerant beings of late, and I find that by quietening the mind, stilling the mind, and trying to become more compassionate and connect with other living beings, just become more tolerant of one another. So it can only benefit society at large. So that is just one aspect. But definitely the stilling of the mind also helps me as a person. Times of late have been very difficult for people. And I find that a lot of my students and people that I speak with are expressing their issues with mental health at the moment. And I definitely have found that practicing yoga benefits us in that way on different levels, because sometimes mental health may not be a mental problem or an emotional problem. It can even be a hormonal problem that can affect us and make us believe that it's something mental. And yoga helps us on every level. So, addressing hormonal issues. And I'm speaking about that specifically because that is a condition that I have that does definitely affect my mental state. So by practicing yoga regularly, I find that it helps me physically with my hormones, that ultimately helps me on a mental level, on an emotional level. So yeah, I just find that the key is to have a regular practice, to make it sustainable, because it's pointless, having an erratic practice or doing something even once in 2 weeks or once a month. You need to keep a more regular practice. I would suggest daily, even if you cannot sustain a whole hour or even a half an hour. Even if you spend 10 minutes with meditation or pranayama, just get on your mat and make it a routine that it becomes a part of your life and something you won't separate. And here again, connection again. Just connecting that practice with yourself on a daily level. It will bring you benefits that only you will be able to appreciate. And all my students always come back to me, and they actually say that some of them say things like, "I'm addicted to yoga." It's like it puts them on a natural high. So yeah, that's from my personal experience.
Thank you, Ramashna. And I'm going to introduce Audrey as well to highlight some of the key concepts of yoga and how we can integrate it into our practice our day. Thank you.
Thank you, Diego. Thank you, Remy. A lot of what you said, you've already touched on things that I was also thinking about, and it just highlights the interconnectivity of all of our experiences with yoga. Whilst it's very deeply personal, there are universal truths that apply to all of our practices, such as it brings stillness to us. It brings a sense of calm. I, for example, work in a very highly stressful environment. It's very fast-paced, and during the day, I sometimes find myself needing to take a moment to just get out of my head and come into my body and just be present. And there's so many techniques that yoga teaches you that you can apply this to. Pranayama, as you touched on, just taking a deep breath in and focusing on the breath for just a minute gives you untold benefits. Sometimes if you're in a meeting or you're in a bit of a stressful situation and you can feel yourself getting a bit upset, something as simple as taking the Jnana Mudra, which is just the forefinger and the thumb, and bringing this connection together calms the mind, slows your blood pressure down, slows the heart rate down. Something as simple as that can bring a sense of calm and a sense of ease into a situation, giving you a bit of perspective and just changing your focus a bit. Another asana is often spoken about in the sense that that is not the end goal of yoga. And it's completely true. And it's to prepare the body to meditate and to sit in long periods, for long periods of time in meditation. But I also believe that what we learn on the mat can be taken out to the rest of the world. If you are in a pose that you find particularly challenging, maybe Warrior 2 or Trikonasana, the concentration and the focus it requires to maintain that pose is something you can take to the world. Also, the patience you need to have with yourself whilst trying to reach a difficult posture or trying to maintain stability and balance in a difficult posture is practicing self-love. It's an act of self-care to not label what you're going through or label this pose as being too difficult or chastising yourself for not being able to maintain your balance. It's a version of self-love. And on the other hand, falling out of a pose is hilarious sometimes. And it can give us a sense of childlike behavior because there's so many studies that talk about how adults laugh so many times fewer, so many times a day, and it's so many fewer than children. And kids laugh so many more times because they are more childlike, they have a sense of wonder and awe that we have lost as adults and become more jaded. So just seeing that we are not serious beings, we are not meant to be solemn and serious all the time, take ourselves and life too seriously, is something we can learn on the mat. And taking this lightheartedness, this childlike behavior, and a sense of laughter and awe into the world is something that we can learn from our mats as well. And personally, that's helped me in my life and having that patience to realize that you may not accomplish a pose or a practice in a short period of time teaches me patience. I'm pretty impatient as a person, and it's taught me that. And most importantly, to not take life or yoga or myself too seriously. Thank you, Diego.
Thank you so much, Audrey. And I like that you shared the light on yoga, also to laugh and to enjoy the beauty of laughter yoga. So thank you. And we're going to speak to Kolani. I'll just put Kolani on the spotlight. So thank you, Audrey. And Kolani is going to share with us also the practical application of yoga in our lives.
I give thanks for this opportunity. For me, philosophically, the philosophy and yogic terms, well, for me, I would think of yoga as a self-study, and it's relevant in this time. People need to study who they really are and know who they really are so they can understand the parts of others. Yoga also come up with a nice concept of surrender to the divine, as the other teacher told us that he's practicing yoga that is based on showing that all things revolve to a divinity. We all find once you complete a self-study, you can acknowledge that some of the things can happen and you are limited, and the only thing that can make all things make sense and matters is that intention of yoga, of surrendering to the divinity, to the highest power. It's one of the yogic concepts that I think it's more of relevant. There's a concept of cleanliness in yoga. That if you are a yoga practitioner, philosophically, so that cleanliness is not a physical cleanliness only. It can be a physical cleanliness, it can be emotionally and spiritually. So all these yogic concepts for me as a teacher, and even other teachers, will say let's go back and study them and apply them. And so apply them is to be an example of how you can decipher this yogic term when they talk about a knowledge of self, cleanliness. All this should reflect to us as teachers. I do acknowledge that today we are so busy as teachers and we don't have the full scope to ground students with philosophy and these yogic concepts, but they can only reflect only to us if you really know and understand this yogic term, concepts and philosophy. You can apply to yourself and being a reflection to your student. Yoga tells us to be kind, to be warm-hearted, so all these concepts for me, they are more practical to me since I came on the background of township, and the space of township is always being recognized as a space of shame and space with all that. But to know the definition of yoga's philosophy and to know this yogic term, you will overcome anything. But the challenge, as I'm saying, is for us as teachers to decipher all these philosophical terms and how we can mainstream them to the public and to our students particularly. As I said, the only way to make sense of the philosophy of yoga and all these yogic terms is to apply them to self, and automatically to the student. Another one who studies you or sees you, he will see the relevance of ahimsa and the law of non-violence. Why we should have that kindness. I give thanks.
Thank you, Kolani. So it's really lovely, and I like that you mentioned kindness and compassion. It's a theme that came up a lot from our teachers this evening. So that's something very practical that yoga can allow us to bring kindness and compassion into our day-to-day. So in closing, I would like to invite those that are attending the workshops. We will be having 3 months of sponsored classes in the Glenwood area, in line with Iseva and in association with Sivananda. So if you'd like to get in touch with myself, you can connect on innerwellnessstudio.com. So I'll hand this over to the teachers as well. They can let us know how we can connect with you online and maybe give us an insight as to where your classes are happening, so those can really embody and come to start really developing and grounding in a self-practice and self-study through the yoga. So I'd just invite us, Ramashna, you can share about your yoga practice. We would appreciate that.
Thank you. So at present, I am not teaching that on that many days a week. It's going to get more frequent in the near future. So for now, I'm just in Chatsworth, in the Chatsworth area. I do a class at the Nelson Mandela Community Youth Center. It's a very community-based class, which is very wonderful that we're getting our community involved in yoga. So And I really like the fact that the team here at the Nelson Mandela Youth Center is promoting yoga to the community. So I thank them for that. And so I teach regularly on a Sunday morning between 8 and 9. And on a Tuesday evening between 5:45 and till 7:15 in the evening, I am at the Protea Hall in Amsterdam. And otherwise, you can connect with me. I can leave you my cell number, which is 071-720-4100. And you can connect with me on WhatsApp, and I can share with you my lessons that classes that I will be holding in the near future in the Durban North area. But that's to come. So thank you so much, Diego, for that opportunity.
That's so lovely. That's very exciting. And just remind us, it's Mantra in Motion. Is that correct? Can we connect with you?
Yes,
Mantra
so
in
you
Motion.
can connect with me on Instagram, and that's Mantra and Motion, or on Facebook also Mantra in Motion, or Ramlutchman Naidu.
Excellent. Thank you. I look forward to doing some more yoga practice with all of us. And if anybody else of the teachers would like to share, this would be our opportunity just to share. So feel free to mention. You can even just say our passing words to the group. Our spotlight Nonhlanhla. Thank you. Thank you, Nonhlanhla.
Right, I'm mute there. Thank you once again, Diego. I do have free meditation classes, so I'm a meditation coach. I do those every Wednesday at Sukuma, which is St. Giles and Point Road. And however, I have also put together some resources where I have guided meditations for relaxation, deep sleep, and just like healing. So I've got those, and those who would like can contact me via WhatsApp on 083-967-0743. All the resources will be sent to you free of charge, and then you can start using them as you please. Thank you, Diego.
That's so lovely. It's so nice that you're offering openness and teachings of yoga in that very open environment. So thank you for that. And maybe for Audrey, I'll just highlight, Audrey, you can just say good evening to the group, just to send your passing words. Thank you.
Thank you, Diego. Thank you, everyone, for joining us this evening. It's been a lovely discussion with like-minded people, and for people who are interested in yoga or even continuing a practice, because I often hear that someone has begun yoga many years ago, but has somehow lost it along the way. This video is your cue to begin again. And I'd like to invite new practitioners. And my advice to you is, don't worry about being able to touch your toes. It's what you learn on the way down that matters. It's not about being thin and being super flexible and wearing beautiful leggings. Begin where you are right now with whatever you have. Have a lovely evening, and thank you for joining us. Namaste.
So thank you again, everybody. Just a reminder for our last two workshops of the series, it will be taking place tomorrow, Tuesday. The third workshop will be discussing wellness and yoga for all, how yoga can be made more inclusive for different age groups and everybody. And our fourth workshop will be looking at yoga, a holistic approach to stress management. So I invite us to join us tomorrow, and have a peaceful evening. Thank you for taking the time to share the joy in yoga. And maybe we'll have a little parting note from Kolani of our mantra of the program. Is you can share with us. Together we are connected and God.
We give thanks for all the good things said and done here. And we give thanks for Sivananda Wealth Peace Foundation. And we also give thanks for Inner Wellness for making it possible. And we give thanks even for Iseva for having that intention to make yoga more accessible, more inclusive, and to use yoga as a tool that can unify us and bring us back to the essence. I will be teaching as part of Iseva program as Toolbox. We'll be hosting Siyathokoza yoga classes, of which is yoga and mindfulness. For now, that's where you can find me if you want to partake on my classes. But if you want to talk to me personally, I have 2 Facebook accounts, Jacolan Ratebe, and other one, Cholan Ratebe. Also, you can link me at my email if you want to share more of my writings. It's jaking101 @gmail.com. Jaking, JAHKING101 @gmail.com. There I'm welcoming everyone to write to me and share. I'm willing even to share some of my writings there. Thanks everyone who participated in this International Yoga Day. Let us all practice righteousness and realize our higher purpose. Blessed.
Yes, thank you.